Alright then, g'day everyone, всем привет и добро пожаловать. My name is Linus and in this quick presentation я собираюсь поговорить sur un sujet plutôt populaire in linguistics. Confusing, right? Well, I bet, but don't worry, I got you covered because today we will be talking about code switching and code mixing. So with that said, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the video. Now, just before we start, I thought we could have a little sneak peek of our presentation's content, alright? So, we will be kicking it off by defining both code switching and code mixing, stating their types and functions, and also comparing between the two. Like, what's the difference anyway, you might ask? Furthermore, we'll be looking at their impact on the second or foreign language development. And last but certainly not least, I have to mention that this work of ours is meant to briefly explain the different insights of many scholars about code switching and mixing. Alright, that's pretty much it for the content, so without further ado, let's just hop into it. Now, if we're trying to define code switching, we're going to have to investigate different angles, right? One of them being the literal side of things. See, if we look at code switching, we can all agree that it is a two-word compound noun, right? So what does each one of them refer to? Like, what is code and what is switch? Well, simply put, code refers to language. You know, the means that human beings use to communicate. You all know that already? That is to say, any structured and organized combination of words, articles, prepositions in order to convey meaning. While switch means to change or adopt one thing in another. In other words, more convenient to our context here, switching means to go back and forth between one language and another, or one dialect and another. Code switching may take a slightly more advanced meaning linguistically and sociolinguistically speaking, but before we dive into that, let's have a quick historical recap of how it all started, alright? So, many researches have been conducted about bilingualism in 1913, and the findings have shown that most of the participants switched codes back and forth in their speech. But little importance was given to this phenomenon since they focused only on the main subject, which was bilingualism, but the perspective on this switch changed in 1972 when Bloom and Grumpers published an article. After conducting a study in a Norwegian village where they found out that the members of the village spoke two different dialects of Norwegian and used them in parallel. This had opened doors for further debate and study about this phenomenon, which is subject of interest for sociolinguists till now. Now, who says sociolinguist says sociolinguistics? So, what does code switching mean in sociolinguistical terms? Well, basically, it is the alternation of words of two languages, a situation where we use two distinct codes in our discourse. Placing it in other words, it refers to the use of two different languages or codes within, let's just stick with language, alright? It refers to the use of two different languages with the same sentence, while in linguistical terms, code switching or language alternation is the same thing, occurs when a speaker alternates between two or more languages. Or language varieties, of course, in the context of a single conversation. Multilinguals sometimes use the element of multiple languages when conversing with others. Thus, code switching is the use of more than one linguistic variety in a manner consistent with the syntax and phonology of each variety. We will be checking out some examples after we discuss the different types of code switching, but before we do that, did you know that In multilingual societies, the use of language depends on the context in which the speaker interacts with his interlocutor. Well, that is to say, each language is used in a particular situation. A language used at home with siblings, another at school, and another is used with friends. And it depends on the objectives of the speaker, really. Certainly, code switching is the result of bilingualism and multilingualism. There's no doubt that when a speaker switches from a language to another, depending on a given situation, the speaker will choose a language his interlocutor understands, right? Which is systematic. Otherwise, the speaker would be talking in vain without being understood. See, an example of that is, okay, let's imagine a Russian family moving from Russia to the United States. Alright, they go live there. And the children grow up speaking Russian as their native language, but they learn English outside of their home. So when those children speak to their siblings, they might code switch sometimes between Russian and English. Alright, moving on with the types of code switching. Shanna Poplak, a distinguished university professor in the linguistic department of the University of Ottawa, Canada, stated 3 types of code switching in 1980. So we have the intrasentential code switching, all right, the intersentential code switching, and the tag switching. So, intersentential code switching, we're going to start with that. It is also known as the extrasentential switching, and by its name, we can already understand that it occurs outside the sentence or clause level, right? Meaning that it requires switching between sentences in the sense that each sentence is in a different language. Namely, the first sentence being in L1 and the second in L2. To clarify things up, let's look at some of the examples that we got here. So first sentence says, haste makes waste. Prends ton temps. See, in the first sentence, the speaker used English, while in the second one, he used French. It directly switched, and it's pretty much the same thing for all the other examples. Just look at the this example here. J'ai oublié mes lunettes. Can you bring them to me? See, we have a switch from the French language to the English language. So that's it. I hope it's clear. Well, I think it is. And in case it's not, just feel free to point it out in the comment section or anything. I will be glad to answer. Right, so next on the list is the intrasentential code switching. It is very common in the languages that share common family, like Spanish, English, and Arabic. And it occurs within the sentence or a clause, as you can see, unlike the intersentential code switching. An example of that is when you are running out of time and need to submit a project work, you turn to your comrades and go like, we have un grand problème, I kid you not. But then, one of them tells you that you can ask your supervisor to give you a little bit more time to finish. But then again, your other comrade tells you this, I don't think il va accepter. Don't even ask him. So here, you can notice that the switching happens within one sentence, right? We have un grand problème. Well, this is the other sentence. We have un grand problème. This is English, and just switch to French within the same sentence. See, sentence 1, sentence 2. Right. Anyways, moving to the third type, which is tag switching. Tag switching is self-explanatory. In this type of code switching, a word or a phrase from another language is tagged in the conversation. You may notice from the example below that it is very similar to intrasentential code switching. Let's look at these two examples here. You went to visit Victor, da? Look at the second example here. So in this tag question, instead of saying right in English, we notice the integration of the Russian word da, which means yes, but but is rather the equivalent for the word right in this context. So the insertion or tagging could be more than one word. It could be a phrase, just like in the first example. And it says, "Tu dois pas rester ici." You know that. So in the second sentence, we just integrated a whole sentence in English. Okay, with this, we have cleared the types of code switching out of the way, and now comes the big question. Why do bilingual and multilingual people code switch? Well, code switching performs a whole lot of functions, really. People can use it to hide fluency or memory problems in the second language. It can be used to mark switching from informal situations to more formal ones. It can be used to exert control, especially between parents and their children, and really for a bunch of other reasons, like people generally switch codes during discourse about a particular topic when a specific language is necessary or preferred. Alternative speech may better convey relevant concepts too. See, like in science, technology, medicine, so on and so forth. It can also be used while reporting someone's speech, like the reporter may keep the language in which it was said, using the exact words, just like that. Another reason is when our interlocutor is having a hard time comprehending specific words or concepts initially, or when we are asked for, for more clarification. It can be used even when someone wants to strengthen a command while asking for a favor. You see, we really do have many things. Now, code switching here is meant to emphasize or provide inspiration. Now, moreover, it can be considered as a survival tactic, used to better fit in with a given group, right? Or a society, and feel the belongingness to a particular speech community. As it can occur in contrast when a person wants to transmit a message to someone with the intention of excluding others around them who do not have access to that language. Okay, so suppose you want to tell your friend a secret, your Kabyle friend, right? While there are two French people alongside you who could hear you, right? So instead of using French, you use Kabyle to tell that secret. Otherwise, they would understand. Okay, so that's the idea here. Now, here comes one interestingly confusing fact about code switching, alright? So, in some cases, people do it without any intention. So, if we look at the illustration here, we see this little guy saying, "Welcome, chers spectateurs et spectatrices." Well, he most probably did it to spice things up a little bit and show off his language skills, and thus impress his audience. Well, at least it seems to work based on nose clapping hands. Anyways, now if we look at the other illustration here, we see this girl who does seem frightened to death indeed. See, at that exact moment, the girl was most probably taken by surprise and never had the time to think about what she was going to say. As a result, she unintentionally code switched and went like, "Oh my god, c'est quoi ça?" Right? Now, another important point worthy of mentioning is that in code switching, there's a distinction between the matrix language and the embedded one. Right, so what are these? The matrix language is the dominant language in the discourse. Generally the speaker's native language, okay? While the embedded language is the integrated language in the one's speech. If we see this graph, we would understand very quickly. So here's the matrix language. It is the most used, while the embedded one is a bit less used. You see the idea, too. Alright, now that we have dealt with code switching, its types and functions, we're going to talk a bit about code mixing, alright? So, alright then, not wasting any more time. I know this video is getting longer than expected than it should be. Okay. code mixing is found mainly in informal situations, right? And it refers to the use of various mixing of linguistic units, including, morphemes, words, modifiers, and all the rest of the pack, really. Primarily from two participating grammatical systems within a sentence. In other words, code mixing is intrasentential and is constrained by grammatical principles and may also be motivated by social psychological factors. Now, Poplack, we're back with her. She claimed that a switch typically occurs within a specific clause or sentence, while in 1994, okay, that was, Poplack said that in 1986, now we're in 1994, where Wardaw said that code mixing occurs when conversants use both languages together, to the extent that they change from one language to another in the course of a single utterance. Okay? Just like code switching, code mixing is divided into types. And the least we can say is that there's plenty of them, alright? Starting from basic intrasentential and intralexical code mixing and arriving at Sweeto's and Mushkin's classifications. So first, let's look at the intrasentential code mixing. So this type occurs within a phrase, clause, or a sentence boundary, okay? Let's look at those examples. Il s'allonge sur son bed et dort profondément. You see here the word bed is integrated. Alright. Intralexical code mixing. This type of code mixing occurs within a word boundary, just like the first one, involving a change of pronunciation. This type of code mixing occurs in the phonological level. So that's the only difference between the two. Example says, he was a lieutenant in the French army. So you see, we integrated the word lieutenant, which is pronounced in British instead of American. He was a lieutenant in the French army. This is it. What now? We've got Sweeto's classification. So in 1983, Sweeto divided code mixing into two types, and namely inner code mixing and outer code mixing. So what are these? Inner code mixing occurs due to the insertion of elements derived from the native language with all their variations, while the outer code mixing is the mixing that occurs due to the insertion of elements from a foreign language. Not the native language, but a foreign language, with all their variations too. It means that the first language of the speaker, in this case, national language, is inserted with his or her language, or inserted with a foreign one from the speaker's background. Right? Now, Mushkin's classification. Year 2000. Code mixing is divided into three types. So Mushkin had three types. We have insertion, alternation, and concurrent lexicalization. We're starting it off by insertion. Approaching that depart from the notion of insertion due to constraint in terms of the structural properties, some base or matrix structures. Here, the process of code mixing is conceived as something borrowing. C'est tout dépend de la team et de l'événement. You see the borrowing here? Team is an English word. Cuisine is a French word borrowed by an English speaker. I am making some French cuisine tonight. Sounds fancy, right, by the way? J'ai pas tellement regardé des films en streaming. See, this is the same thing. You speak in a language, in a given language, and then you borrow. Okay. Furthermore, Mushkin states the branches of insertion. Alright, now we're going to talk about that. So we said that insertion is a type of code mixing, and it has branches, mainly 4 types, and then we have insertion of words, insertion of phrases, insertion of word repetition, and insertion of idioms. See, when you insert a word, it's a word. Okay, here a Russian speaker is speaking. Мы собираемся разобраться с этим завтра. But in the beginning of his sentence, he used the English word okay. I mean, now it's more of a international word, but it's originally English, right? Here, our speaker said, okay, we are going to deal with it tomorrow. The second one, insertion of phrase. It's pretty clear, insert a phrase instead of a word up in the first one. Ini namanya reading skills. Well, that was Indonesian. This is called reading skills. Third, insertion of word repetition. Je t'ai préparé une big surprise. Here you see, we integrated the English word big while repeating it. And it makes a difference, really. Instead of saying je t'ai préparé une surprise, like this, je t'ai préparé une big surprise, we can already feel the hype. So you see, this works in these situations. And fourth one, insertion of idioms. We all did that at some point, right? See the example, tu ne connais pas toute l'histoire, don't judge a book by its cover. Alright, say you know the idiom, don't judge a book by its cover, but you never really heard about its equivalent in your native language. So you use it as it is. I mean, that's called integration, right? So that's it. Moving on. We have alternation, the second type. Approaches departing from alternation view the constraints on mixing in terms of capacity or equivalence of the language involved at this switch point. Si je veux dire, change it to another sentence. For you know, nous sommes toujours cohérents. Quelles que soient ses actions, it must be crime. Okay. Conjurant lexicalization. Like the notion of conjurant lexicalization underlies the study of style shifting and dialect standards variation rather than bilingual language use. So here, conjurant lexicalization has to do with dialects rather than, interlinguistic speech. Examples here are, je me connecte en utilisant mon smartphone. Alright, here, this doesn't really work well, but we can use other examples of our own native language, like you take a dialect from Bijaya and another one from Buira, and it will work out. I mean, we have word differences, we have expressions differences, so that's how it works. Okay then, that's pretty much it too for code mixing. And now that we have an idea about both CS and CM, only one question arises here. Yep, what is the difference between the two? So instead of bringing in too much theory and explanation, we opted for a rather simple but effective, explanatory illustration here. And there you have it. So, it says that switching between two languages back and forth in the same sentence, just like a squirrel jumps between two trees. So that's code switching, right? You have English, and suddenly, you jump to French. I mean, you use them interchangeably, right? While code mixing means using one primary language but mixing in words or ideas from another, just like if the squirrel would sit on one tree but will eat an acorn from another. You see the squirrel here is holding an acorn. Let's imagine that the acorn is a word, alright, a French word. This is the French tree, tree number 1, French, and this tree number 2 is English. And then the squirrel brought the acorn from the English tree. The French tree, sorry. I'm getting a little bit confused here, but it's alright. I'm pretty sure you got the idea. So, yeah, I have to say that, to conclude, code switching and code mixing are, effective strategy to enable bilingual and multilingual people to produce pleasant and creative discourse and keep the flow of communication. It is used in daily conversations for different purposes, as we have seen, so that it makes the connections between its users stronger, clearer, and it is the proof of open-mindedness and the ability to express one's knowledge intelligently and easily. So yeah, guys, this is it for today's video. I really hope that you got something out of it, and I would like to say, for those who made it this far, you are amazing. And for those who just kept jumping around the video until the end, well, you're amazing too. So yeah, thank you for your time and consideration, and if there's anything that you think needs more clarification, then don't hesitate to point it out in the comment section. I will be more than glad to answer. So you can also leave your email if you want to get the full version document of our presentation. And oh yeah, one last thing, don't forget to smash that like button if you liked the video, and if you didn't, well, just give it a thumbs up anyway. Okay then, thank you for watching.